Have you ever heard an engineer say that a track needs a little bit less 200 hertz, or maybe that the vocals need a little bit more 10 kilohertz and up, or maybe that they're hearing a piercing harsh frequency around 3.2 kilohertz without, and the key here is without even looking at an EQ? They just hear it by ear. And to some, this seems like some sort of wizardry, but to others who know and use the techniques that I'm going to show you in this video, this is actually totally doable and not that hard. So friend, would you like to be able to identify and name frequencies for yourself all by ear? Even with a blindfold on? By staying until the end of this video, you can invest directly into that skill set for yourself, and you'll surprise yourself with your new ability to start naming frequencies all by ear. How? Well, there are two ways to get good at this, and the first is just to mix a lot of songs and use a lot of EQ until these frequencies are just second nature to you. But there's a second way which uses tricks that you can learn to get to know these frequencies a little bit quicker. And while I do recommend you mix a lot to install these frequencies in your head, this video is going to cover way number 2, the tricks I personally use to be able to hear and name frequencies without even looking at an EQ. These techniques work really well for me, and I hope that they will for you too. So here we have an EQ and a song called That's Not What I Wanted by Luke Prov, and it sounds like this.
That's not what I wanted, that's just what I need.
All right, so we're gonna start from the left side, which are the lower frequencies, and work our way through, and I'm gonna show you how to hear and how to name these frequencies all through these 20 to 20,000 frequencies that we get to know. Now, this isn't just gonna be any other video where an engineer is going through and saying, these are the lows, these are the low mids. I'm gonna actually teach you the technique I use to be able to name these areas of the frequency range just by listening. And that technique is association. I'm going to show you what that means in just a moment, but let's start by moving towards the low end. And we're going to look at specifically 20 hertz up till about 85 hertz, okay? And this is the area that is thumping, kind of rumble type of area. So let's listen in this mix what that sounds like. Okay, so this is going to be the sub-thump area where you feel it more than you hear it. Keep in mind, there's zero detail. It's very unclear. You're just hearing that low rumble. So when I say association, what does that mean? Think of something like a close-by thunderstorm or an earthquake, okay? I want you to associate this area kind of under 80 hertz or so with that. And what you can do is now already know that when you feel that rumble or you feel that thump of a kick drum, that's going to be in that range. And the more that you work in mixes, you're going to be able to pinpoint the closer to the specific, whether it's 50 hertz or whether it's, 85 hertz. But the idea is that you can be like, okay, there's something there. We got a little too much low information under kind of 80 hertz. And now you can ballpark that just because you associated that with that thump, okay? You might be saying, okay, that's really easy, but what about all this other stuff in here? And there's so many parts of the mid-range. We're going to get there, and I think you're going to like it, okay? Let's look at this next section right here, okay? And this is going to be from about 85 all the way up until 200. Now, let's associate this again with a new sound. We're going to think of the meat of a bass guitar, everything above kind of that thump of the kick, okay? But let's get outside of bass instruments. Let's think of maybe a male vocal, like my voice, for example. The lowest frequencies of my voice, of a male baritone voice, would be kind of in this area. It could also be the fundamental of the snare hit. Anything from around 85 to 200 is going to be bass frequencies, anything above that lowest thunderstorm rumble, okay? So if it sounds like bass, but it's not thumping and it's not hitting you in the chest or in the stomach, you're going to be able to ballpark it and say out loud, like, there's something in this kind of 100 to 200 zone. That's what that sounds like. Let's have a listen and see if that makes sense with what we talked about, okay? Listen for that snare, that fundamental snare. That's it right there. Okay, 181.
That's not what I wanted, that's just what I need.
That's that bass guitar, okay? So anything that's bass that is not thumping and you're feeling it is gonna be more in that range. Just think bass drum, fundamental of the snare, even some lower vocals. We'll get even more so into the vocals, and this is in that muddy range. Now you're really gonna like this one when we associate it. Here's how you can name 200 to 400 hertz just by thinking. This is the trick I use, and it works pretty well for me because I have a male baritone speaking voice. And so if your voice sits in the same register, you're gonna be able to do this out loud, which is close your mouth, literally close your mouth and start kind of talking with your mouth closed. And this is gonna make this underwater kind of woofy muddy sound that sounds like this, right? It's a little bit silly, I know, but it works. That is that range that we're looking at here. Now, if you have a voice in a different range, totally cool. Just imagine a low male voice like this, mouth closed, underwater talking with this woofy sound. Listen for it here. It's all there in that 200 to 400. So if you're wondering, okay, is it the 200 to 400 range? Associate it with your closed mouth, talking, humming, and you get this woofy sound, okay? This mud. That's what we call mud in the mix, okay? So that's the association I want you to try. And all of a sudden you're going to be listening to a mix. You're going to hear kind of this, right? And you're going to go, okay, that's somewhere in 200 to 400 about, and you can ballpark it. Now, if you hear more of a boxy type of sound, think of a cardboard box being hit. That's the next association. That's going to be closer to 400. Let's listen for that. Okay, so that's that 400 range there. 300 to 400. Think of like a cardboard box being hit and that resonance of the cardboard box. That's going to be in that range too. Okay, so that's the next association. Let's keep moving up. We're doing great. We're almost halfway. Stick with me until the end. It's going to be really, really worthwhile for you to know these ranges and the associations I'm going to give you. Also, I'm going to give you a little gift at the end as well. So stick around until the end. You won't regret it. Invest this time in yourself, because next we're going to cover this above 400. We're going to look more into 500 to 900. And what this is going to be is honkiness. Literally think of like a large goose honking, okay? Or a car honk type of sound, or maybe the timbre and the notes of a French horn, like this honk, or a trombone. But I'm not talking about like the overtones and detail, like the high buzzing of a trombone or of a car honk. I'm talking about like where that honkiness really is. And as soon as you hear honking in a track or a mix, you can already start to pinpoint. I usually will default to like the 600 to 900 area for that, but you can already guess it's going to be in this range in here. So let's listen to the track and then we'll zoom in on that kind of 500, 600, 700, 800, 900 range. Okay, back to just the track. That little guitar lick there is a perfect example, because right here around 700, listen to how honky that guitar is. It literally sounds like it could be a horn that is honking, just when we cut out the highs and zoom in on that range. Let's listen again. I'm going to go to a little bit of a different section in the song so you can really get to know this honking range. All right, so it's that meaty middle honking. It's going to put you in the 500 to 900 ballpark, okay? So that's the association I want you to make with that section. If you hear honking, you can already say, hey, I hear something kind of around, I think it might be 700. You can just jump in there right away and be able to pinpoint it. Okay, let's keep moving our way up. You're doing great. Stick with me here. It's all going to be worthwhile, especially in these high frequencies. If you can learn what these sections of detail are and where that presence is, this is a great skill to have, because here are where problem frequencies sit. And once we start getting up here into the presence band where we can find problem frequencies, I'm going to talk about two different associations I want you to make. The first is going with a wider band, okay, a more macro move. And the second is a narrow band, focusing in on specific frequencies. That sounds crazy, right? Hearing a specific frequency and calling it out by name. I'll show you what I mean in a second, okay? You don't want to miss it. Okay, we're going to start around 1K, moving up a little bit into 2K. This whole zone right here, 1K to 2K, this is what's going to be that telephone filtery sound. So if you hear a song that has more of a telephone filter type of sound, or it's very telephony, there are telephone kind of frequencies ringing out, that's going to be this zone. And you can already ballpark it that it's going to be, around 900 to 2K. It's going to be in there. So let's listen now what that sounds like. All right, it sounds like it could be coming out of a really tiny speaker or maybe a telephone. I'm going to go to another part of the song, and I'm going to boost that out for you so you can really hear what that sounds like boosted.
That's not what I wanted, that's just what I needed. I didn't really need it, I don't want it at all. How can I move forward? These weren't the doctor's orders. A superficial sentence has no meaning.
Okay, so it's kind of like that music in the distance type of sound where you're not really getting any highs, you're not really getting any lows or even any low mids. It's just that nice mid-range, that telephone kind of area. Think 900 up to 2K, even a little bit past 2K. But as soon as you get that telephoniness, you can ballpark it in that zone just by associating it with a telephone. Now, remember what we said about pinpointing frequencies? Going narrow? Here's what I want you to think of. To find a narrow frequency and to be able to name it in between this same range we're talking about in this telephone range, here's the trick that I use. I associate it with where I can comfortably whistle. With a male baritone voice, when I whistle, right, just whistling like that, my natural kind of whistling range that feels comfortable to me is in this zone. If I go lower, my whistle kind of breaks. The range isn't there. If I try and go higher, it's too high. I physically can't whistle it. And then we're getting into another section of whistle, which I'm going to give you an association for in a minute. But see if this makes sense to you once I play this out loud and listen for these whistles. That's very comfortably for me to whistle in my vocal range. So that's how I do it. And I encourage you to find where your comfortable whistling range sits. Like it kind of, my whistle just breaks like the way a voice breaks at the top of its chest voice. I know that I can comfortably whistle in this zone. So if I can hear something and I can start whistling it, I know that frequency is going to be sitting between about 900 and 2K. If it's on the lower side of that, it's going to be lower, right? And if it's on the higher side, so my lower whistles are going to be closer to 900. So I can literally play a song and I can hear a whistling. I can whistle out loud and see if it's in my naturally lower whistle. Then I can say, okay, this is going to be 800, 900. Or if it's in my naturally higher whistle where it's about to break, I'm around 1.8K. Isn't that so crazy? And you can literally do this too. Get to know where your natural whistle range sits. Okay? So that's it for me. That's the narrow band, and I can name frequencies like that. Now, here's how to check out the next band, which you're going to want to get to know, which is around 2 to 4K, okay? And there are a couple things to consider. The first is going to be, okay, a wide band. What do we hear in a wide band? And then I'll get to the narrowness in a second. We'll talk about whistling again, and a really cool trick you're going to love. The wide band is here from 2K to 4K, and this is where you're going to start hearing detail, okay? So this is going to be maybe some guitar string detail or piano string detail. It's no longer woofiness. It's no longer honkiness. It's not that whistling telephone sound. It's starting to get crispy. It's not sizzling, but it's starting to get crispy. And the way I think of this, the way I associate this is with scissors cutting paper. When you hear some, I wish I had a pair of scissors right now to show you this, but when you think of scissors cutting a piece of paper, that's all going to be in this 2 to 4K range, and you can associate it right away because it's crispy, it's adding presence, it's adding detail, but it's not like super, super high and shiny yet. So let's listen to that and instill this within you. Like I can literally hear scissors cutting paper all through that area. Okay. So that's the next band to get to know is that beginning of the presence. And then you can pinpoint naming it as somewhere in between 2 and 4K. How do you actually pinpoint it on closer details? Well, I'll tell you right now. There are 2 frequencies. If I'm getting a piercing frequency, and I think of like a whistling piercing sound, but not a male whistle like I was doing, like a that's going to be lower. Think of a piercing whistle. And so what I want you to imagine is like a small bird whistling right in your ear. It's higher than those lower whistles I was doing because it's a small bird and it's going to hurt. It hurts more. It's a little too much, okay? And these are very commonly about in between 3.2 and 3.8. Those are 2 areas in mixing that are always that like piercing bird whistle. Okay. Now I'm going to go through with this narrow band and see if you can hear this little whistling and associate it with a small bird. Okay. And I wanted to also include this. This is that same range we're talking about before, 2K to 4K. So you're going to get whistling down here too. So literally, can you hear the birds outside and just imagine like that's that's where those whistles sit, okay? So that's the association I want you to make for this 2 to 4K range. If you hear whistling in there and if it's on the higher side, you're going to be pushing 4K. If it's on the lower side, you're going to be a little closer to 2K, but that's going to be in that bird whistle zone. Not the Alex from Audio Edge's voice whistle area. It's going to be higher. Those bird whistles. You can already tell yourself that's going to be, in the 3K area. All right. So hope you're enjoying this so far. Stick with me a little bit further. You don't want to miss the gift at the end because that's going to really help you tie all this together and give you a secret tool to just use all these frequencies that you're learning now. It helps if you can name them, but if you can actually use them to your advantage while mixing, that's the tool I'm going to give you in a second. But before then, let's cover the last 2 ranges here, I would say. And the first one is going to be 4K, where we ended off, to 8K. And this is presence. This is where brighter S's and consonants are going to start. Human voice brightness, hi-hat detail, okay? So, and even if we tie that together, think of beatboxing. This is a really good association to make. When you're beatboxing, you're doing a consonant like tss, tss, tss. That's a hi-hat. Now check this out. I almost landed right on it with my tss, 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 right? So as soon as you do that hi-hat beatbox, detailed human consonances, a hi-hat hitting the drums, this area can also be piercing and painful too if there's too much. But instead of a bird whistle, it feels more like a needle or like a knife stab than a whistle in your ear. Not to get like violent with this, but that's what this zone feels like when there's too much of it. It's very piercing. So if you're getting that piercing S sound, you're doing that kind of beatbox, those hi-hats, you can already associate it and you can already name these frequencies. I'm hearing a bit too much, 6K, land right in the middle of it. You're going to be able to pinpoint these way faster by having these associations, okay? A couple more for these is going to be the clapping of hands. When you clap, that snappiness of the skin, okay? That's going to be in this zone too. Do you hear that clickiness of the snare? that clapping. So think of clapping of hands or the slap of a basketball when it hits the ground, or even the click of a keyboard, right? Like that, if you can hear that. Okay, so that's that zone, 4 to 8K. Last zone here, you're doing amazing. This is going to be so worthwhile for you to hear frequencies and name them. We're going to go 8K and up. Let me do this with a shelf here. So 8K and up. Okay, these are the highest of the consonances, but now it's really getting sizzly, sparkly, and bright. So the association I want you to make here is think of sparkling cymbals, like that shimmering of the cymbal hit. That's up here, or two more that you're going to love. The sound of breaking glass, okay? All that shiny sparkliness of a smashing glass. Okay, so you know it's going to be 8K and up if it's that sparkly cymbal sound, that breaking of glass, and that maybe even like the buzz of an insect, okay? You hear like a mosquito flying around your room, or there's like a fly buzzing. That buzz is a high buzz. It's up here. Right? That's like bzz, like way up there. Just like buzzing around your room, you know, quietly, way up high. That's going to be 8K, okay? And up. And then once you get into, I like to start calling it the angel breath. That's around like 16K or so. And this is the super airy, extra little bit on top. You know, if it's even above that, you know, insect buzzing or above the breaking of glass, it's that little shimmer at the very top. You know, you're going to be safe calling that 15, 16K. Super airy. Let's hear it one more time.
Just what I needed.
So sometimes it'll just be like the tops of the cymbals or that extra little bit of breath on a pop vocal. That's going to be that 16K area. I encourage you to save this video and watch it over and over and take notes on the sections and the associations. And if you have your own associations that you can make with these areas, they are going to help you name these frequencies yourself. Try this out now. See if you can already listen to a song, solo some frequencies, and start naming where they will be in the frequency spectrum. You're going to really surprise yourself with this technique. This is how I personally do it, and I hope this helped you. And if you enjoyed this video and want more, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because if you don't, I might never see you again, and that would break my heart. So subscribe, and because you stayed till the end, I want to give you a free gift. I'm going to give you my home mixing cheat sheet, and this goes perfectly with what we learned today, because if you're wondering, okay, getting to know these frequencies are great, but how do I get a great sounding mix and know what to boost and what to cut? Well, this cheat sheet has common settings for EQ, compression, and even possible effects for all sorts of instruments, drums, guitars, vocals. It's going to tell you where to boost and cut, so you can start getting those results that you want a lot quicker than just playing that guessing game. So that is free to download. The link will be in the description. Check out the home mixing cheat sheet. Thanks for joining me today, my friend. I'm so glad to spend this time with you, and I'll see you in the next one.